All right. How we doing? We're doing okay? Hey, guys, right here, if you don't mind, go ahead and separate out. There's only where there's white pieces of paper. That would be super helpful. There's a seat up here too. Yeah, right here. Yeah, you guys are still close together. Come on, Cooper man. You got it. Come on, Mullet man. Let's go. It's gonna be all right. Y'all just separate. I'm gonna trust that you guys are gonna do it. That's awesome. We just want to make sure you guys are safe. Okay. Hey, now that we're having fun, let's do this. Let's play another game. Sound okay? There's a seat right there. Right there. Yeah, there you go. Let's have a little fun. We're going to play a simple game of preferences, a game called Would You Rather. Have you ever played Would You Rather before? All right, it's very simple. I'm going to ask you a question. I say, would you rather do this or that? And sometimes these are really difficult to figure out. When I'm trying to figure out my preferences, sometimes it's not all that difficult. So let's just have a couple here. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Would you rather give up showering for a month or give up the internet for a month? Showering for a month. Before I even said anything, I don't know, some dude over here was like, dude, I haven't showered in a month, so it's fine. That's right. Anybody would keep the internet as just they wouldn't shower. Or the other way around. Anybody not give up showering for internet? Okay. You got to, okay, cool. Little shower man, that's great. Okay, let's try this one. Would you rather, let's see, list here. Okay, would you rather anytime that you pull up to a stoplight, it automatically turns green? You got to wait for the other deal, okay? Or would you rather never wait in a line again? Never wait in line, okay. All right. Okay. Very cool. Would you rather be totally covered in fur or rather be covered in scales? Scales? You prefer fur? Well done. All right, I got a couple more. Would you rather, here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to just ask this section right here, okay? You guys feel free to answer, but just not out loud. Would you rather binge watch a show on Netflix or write a 30-page essay? 30-page essay. Netflix, you're the only honest person. Watch Netflix, of course you would. Okay, all right. What would you watch? Friends? No? Okay. I guess it's not on Netflix. That's right. All right. Okay. So obviously we would much rather, you guys were kind of joking, you would not want to write a 30-page essay, you'd rather watch TV show. Let me ask you this, would you rather, this section, would you rather read a 400-page book on the study of moss, or would you rather read an Instagram caption? Obviously, who wants to read a 400-page book on the study of moss? All right, this is for you. Extra points. If you know what the study of moss is called. Mossiology. It's not. It is not. It's called bryology, which has nothing to do with tonight, just the more that you know. Okay, so obviously, when we talk about I would much rather, read an Instagram caption than a 400-page book, or I would rather just chill on my, couch, watching a show on Hulu or something like that, than write an essay, a 30-page paper. Obviously, we don't want to choose those things. We want to choose the easy things. But here's what we're going to talk about tonight. Because we're in this series called Storms, and for the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about storms that kind of happen to us. Maybe they're things that happen to us inwardly or something that happens to us on the outside. But sometimes God uses storms, but the storms aren't something that happen to us, but rather they are something that we choose. In other words, I'm saying sometimes we make decisions to follow God that don't make sense to the world, that create a storm around us. Sometimes we choose the hard thing to do, and we know that it's going to be uncomfortable. We know that sometimes we're going to have to make decisions if we follow Jesus. We're going to have to make decisions that we may lose friends over. Sometimes we are going to be totally misunderstood. And there's going to be storms potentially of misunderstanding or loneliness or hurt because God has called us to do something. And so I don't know if you've ever found yourself in a place where you're trying to follow Jesus, but it doesn't make sense to the world. And so there is this storm going around you, but you're like, man, no, this is what I feel like God has called me to do. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. And we're going to look at a story in the Old Testament about a guy named Elijah. Now, here's the thing about Elijah. Elijah was what they call a prophet. Now, a prophet isn't really somebody who has like a crystal ball in front of them and like they see the future or whatever, but rather a prophet in this time was somebody who would hear from God and then proclaim to the people of God to turn back to God, because the people of Israel would continually turn from God. They would continually turn their backs on God. Something would happen. They would like, oh man, we've totally turned from God. And then like maybe prophets would come and tell them to turn back. And so that is what Elijah is supposed to do in this thing. And I'm telling you, Elijah, from the time he walks onto the pages of our scripture, he is utterly relying on God. Like it is some unbelievable stories that happen in 1 Kings 17. There's this example, it's the first time we hear about him, where it's like, man, God calls him to this place to go away, to be away from people. And God says, hey, go to this place and I like, don't worry about food, because like there's gonna be a stream there, a little brook that you can get water from, and then I'm gonna have the birds bring you food. Now, let's just call a time out on that for a second, okay? Let me let you into my house just for a moment. There are sometimes I'm in the kitchen and I know I've got to make the long trek all the way to my bedroom, which is up, 17 stairs and to the left. And I'm like, oh, man, it's kind of a long journey. I should probably have a road snack, I should probably grab, a bag of chips for my way so I have something to eat on the way up to my bedroom. Anybody ever done that before? Just me, great. So the thing about it is though, is like, Elijah is like, no, like God has called me to go to this place. I don't have to bring food. He hasn't told me how long I'm gonna be there. And so he goes to this place and there's water for him to drink that God provides from a stream. And then the birds, the ravens, bring him food. That is a lot of trust that Elijah has. And he's a prophet, so he's calling people back to God. And sometimes when we are following God, it is in opposition to the world. And so there were a couple of people, there's two people that are married to one another that absolutely hate Elijah, because he keeps calling people back and telling them not to do what the other people are telling them to do. And there's these two people named Ahab and Jezebel. Now, here's the thing about them two. They're married. They hate each other. They hate Elijah because they have defined, now don't miss this, they have defined what is right and wrong in their own way. You guys with me? They've made up their own rules of what is good and what is evil. And so what God deems as good, they actually say is evil, and what they say is good, God has deemed as evil. And so Elijah comes in as a prophet to call the people back, and they are so frustrated because he is stirring up discontent in the people. And so here is what they say about him. This is what it says in 1 Kings 18. It says, when Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, "Is it you, you troubler of Israel?" And he answered, "I have not troubled Israel, but you have. In your father's house, you have abandoned the commandments of the Lord and followed the Baals, which is like a god. Now therefore, send and gather all Israel to me, and at Mount Carmel, and the 450 prophets of Baal, and then 400 prophets of Asherah, and or anyone who eats at Jezebel's table." Now here's the thing. Here's what's about to happen. One of the most unbelievably hysterical stories in the Bible. I'm telling you, now would be the best time to put your phone down, because I'm going to tell you one of the craziest stories from the Bible, okay? It is full of intrigue and comedy, and I just don't want you to miss it, okay? Sound good? Because Elijah is about to challenge Baal, the god Baal, to a duel. He is about to challenge him in the most unbelievable way, okay? So he's about to lay down the challenge, and this is what happens. It said, then Elijah said to the people, I only am a prophet left of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. So this is what the challenge is. Let 2 bulls be given to us, and let them choose 1 bull for themselves and cut it into pieces and lay it on wood and put no fire to it. And I will prepare the other bull, lay on it wood and put no fire to it. And when you call upon the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord, and the God who answers by fire, he is God. And all the people said, it is well spoken. So here is what happens. We've got these prophets, 450 prophets of Baal. We've got the one prophet, Elijah, of the one true God. And basically what he says, we've got 1 bull over here, we've got 1 bull over here, prepare it, don't put fire to it, but whenever you call out to your God, whether it's the God of Baal or whether it's the one true God over here, whoever answers with fire, in other words, whoever just makes fire appear out of nowhere, there's a flaming ball of magma coming down on this bull. That is the one true God. Are you guys with me? Okay, so this is something unbelievable happening, okay? So Elijah, being very kind, says, hey, you know what, guys, 450 prophets, there's 450, there's only one of me. You guys go first, and let's see what happens. And all morning long, nothing. They're running around doing whatever it is that they're doing. They're trying to get their God to bring fire down on it. Nothing is happening all the way until noon. Nothing happens. No fire, nothing. And so Elijah gets a little sassy, okay? He gets a little spicy with them. This is what he says. This is in the Bible, so you should read it. It says this, and at noon, Elijah mocked them. He's making fun of them, okay? And he says this, cry aloud, for he is a God. Either he is musing, or he is relieving himself, or he's on a journey, or perhaps he's asleep and must be awakened. In other words, Elijah looks over to them. He's like, your God's not answering. Maybe he's musing. Maybe he's just kind of daydreaming. Anybody ever daydream in school? You're just kind of like, man, like your teacher calls and you're like, dude, I was miles away in my mind. I have no idea what you're talking about. Please start from the beginning. Like, he's like, maybe your God is totally just, in make-believe land right now. Maybe he's on a journey. Maybe he's on vacation. He at the Cayman Islands this week. Maybe he's not there, okay? Maybe he's pooping. That's what he says. He's like, maybe he's relieving himself. He's in the bathroom. Maybe he got locked in the bathroom. Who knows? Where's your God? Maybe he just is asleep. Maybe his alarm didn't go off. Like, what's going on? And so he's making fun of them. And so Elijah is looking at them and making fun of them, mocking them. But here's what I don't want you to miss. Elijah isn't making this duel, this challenge, so that he can make fun of them. He's not doing this thing so that he can prove them wrong and be like, na boo boo, your God's dumb, blah, 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 No, Elijah, remember, his job as a prophet is to what? Call the people back to God. Are you guys with me? And so his heart is that people would see the one true God, and he wants them to see God reign in power. And truthfully, like that's what Jesus longs for you and for me. He doesn't want us to keep turning our lives to the things of this world. He doesn't want us to keep turning our attention to the things that the world says are cool. He doesn't want us to keep turning our attention to the things that we want to. It says in Romans that when we set our mind on the flesh or the things down here, students, it leads to death. But when we set our mind to the Spirit, to the things of God, man, it leads to life and peace. Jesus came to bring you life. Right where you are, 7th grade you, 8th grade you, he came that you may have life and life abundant. And he knows that the only way that you're going to experience the best and full life that he has for you is with him. And so in the same way Elijah is calling people back to God, I think this story is calling us back to God. That we may not just think it's a funny story, but that we actually may turn our lives back to God. That we would quit playing games with God, but we would actually begin to follow him. That is what Elijah longs for in this story. And so, what happens? Well, prophets of Baal can never get their God to do anything. Why? Because he isn't real. He has no power. But when he prays 2 sentences, not a whole morning of prayer, no. Elijah prays 2 sentences, and there's this huge flame that erupts and totally just encapsulates this bull, makes it dust, licks up all of the water that he had poured on it and everything. And like they are turned back to God. And then he looks at the prophets and he says, you guys are in trouble now. And they capture all of the 450 prophets and slaughter them. Now remember, Elijah has somebody that doesn't really like him, right? Ahab and Jezebel. And when they hear about what happened, well, they get kind of upset. This is what it says in 1 Kings 19. It says, Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, so may the gods do to me and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by this time tomorrow. Then he was afraid, and he arose and he ran for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a broom tree, and he asked that he might die, saying, it is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers. Students, don't miss what's happening here. And Elijah chose to follow after who God was calling him to be. And he was in direct opposition with the world. And it created this storm in his life. It created the reason that he fled was because he was scared. He was nervous. He was anxious, and really for good reason, because like Jezebel, who was in the story that we just read, like wasn't known just to make empty threats. She wasn't known just to like, I'm going to say, I'm going to kill you. You know, like when she said something, it was going to happen. And she basically looked at him right in the eye and said, listen here, Elijah, you will not be alive this time tomorrow because of the way that you treated our prophets. You are as good as a dead man walking. And so Elijah is so stressed and anxious, and he's hurting. And he's lonely, he's by himself, and he is to the point where he's like, God, just take my life. I don't want to live anymore. Please, I'm too overwhelmed for this. He does a couple things that are really interesting. He's actually running from what God has called him to do. He runs away. Did you guys see that? He runs away for where God has called him to do, but then he's running towards God in his own personal prayer life, and he's like, God, I need you to just take my life away from me. It's really interesting, that juxtaposition, but I think sometimes there are storms in our life, not because of things that people have done to us or because just we live in a broken world, but sometimes when we choose to follow in the way of Jesus, storms come because we are in direct opposition with the world. Students, there are going to be times, if you follow Jesus for very long, there are going to be times when your friends around you don't understand you. There's going to be times when you have to make decisions that don't make a ton of sense, but you just feel like God is calling you to do something. There's going to be times where the world, where culture is going to seemingly hate you because you follow Jesus. And I don't just say that from this story, but Jesus himself actually explicitly said this in John 15, which says this, if the world hates you, know that it has hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love you as its own, but because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that is said to you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. It's like I thought this was supposed to be like positive, encouraging time, right? Here's the deal, students. Sometimes when we follow after Jesus, it creates a storm, not because of God, but because we're following in the way of Jesus, and the world hates the way of Jesus because it is in direct opposition with it. Listen, if your life is easy breezy going, you feel like you're just like, man, no issues going on or whatever, we may have to look at your life. You may have to look at your life and say, man, where am I in line with Jesus and where am I in line with the world? Sometimes God calls us to sacrifice. And sometimes it creates a storm in our life, and it may even be like the world hates us. Students, I just want to get kind of practical for a second. There's going to be that kid in your school. There's going to be a student here at FSM that maybe you just don't like, or maybe you think they're just different or they're weird or whatever you want to think about them. And you make fun of them. You bully them. Or maybe you're in a group of friends that are bullying them. Hey, that is your time to stand up for that person. See, bullying isn't like a laughing matter for me. Like it's not, I'm not championing that. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm not thinking you should make people feel bad about themselves. What I'm saying is, like, if you're a Christ follower, you stand up for those people. Are you with me? Like, that's what we're called to do. And there may be times where you lose a group of friends. They think you're dumb. They think you're stupid or whatever, because you are standing up for the weird kid or the kid that looks different or the one that nobody likes. Listen, man, you find yourself right where Jesus is, and they may persecute you because they persecuted Jesus. But I'm telling you, we are called to stand up for those people. Students, there may be times where you're invited to a party and you know, man, there is going to be alcohol at that party, or they're going to be vaping or whatever. And it's like, oh, their parents are there. It's totally fine or whatever. But man, you just got that check in your spirit. You know that that's not what God has called you to do. You know that's not what Jesus has for you. You know that's not in the way of Jesus. And you are going to say, no, I'm not going to be a part of that. I'm not going to go to that party. And that may mean you spend a Friday night or 2 Friday nights or 4 Friday nights all by yourself, but you're going to find yourself right where Jesus is to say, man, if they persecuted him, they're going to persecute me. The world may hate me. And it's going to create this storm in your life because you are following Jesus. There may be a time in your life where you get a job. Maybe when you are early in high school and you have money that is getting into your bank account, and you're going to feel this conviction. You're going to feel like God's calling you to give a portion of your money to your church, or you're going to give a portion of your money to a missionary somewhere. And I'm just going to tell you, live into that. Like, let that be, let that happen, because the thing about it is, people may think you're silly or stupid not to spend all of the money on yourself, but God says it is better to give than it is to receive. And you may be misunderstood, and it may create a storm in your life, but I'm telling you, it's worth it. Students, there may be time in your life when people all around you wear a certain cut of shirt or a certain cut of bathing suit or whatever, and you just, there's something in you that says, I just don't think I need to wear that, or I don't need to be that exposed, or I don't need to look like that to gain approval from other people. And they may be like, well, why don't you have this, and why don't you have this? And you say, I'm gonna dress like modestly because I want to honor God, and I want to honor my body, and I want to honor God through my body. And you may be looked at like you're weird. You may be looked at like you are so dumb, but I'm telling you, man, when Jesus calls us into a, sometimes it is going to create a storm in our life. Students, what I'm trying to say is sometimes we have to choose the storm. Sometimes we have to be willing to choose the storm the same way that Elijah did. And it may not make sense to the world out there, but we're following in the way of Jesus. 1 Corinthians 1:18 says that the word of the cross is folly or silly to those who are perishing, but to those of us who are being saved, it is the power of God. In other words, man, it may feel like a storm, but like I said earlier, when we set our mind on the way of Jesus, man, there is life and peace. God is not a no fun kind of God. No, he is a God that wants to bring you hope and joy and love and peace and all of these beautiful things. But sometimes those are going to come out of a storm that we choose. And in the middle of that storm, in the middle of that, man, people are hating on us. People are like, don't understand us. It may be so isolating. It may be so frustrating. But man, here's the thing that's so beautiful about God is that he knows exactly what you need. He knows exactly what your soul needs in that moment. Because it's exactly where Elijah finds himself. Because like sometimes we need people yelling at us. Do you know what I'm saying? Sometimes just to get us motivated, we've got to have that coach on the sideline that is just screaming right in our face, grabbing our face mask and shaking us. You know what I'm saying? There was this one time a few years back, I used to do CrossFit, which I know you guys are totally not surprised by that, by my unbelievable physique and chiseled nature. Are you laughing at me? Bro, that's hurtful. Man, anyways, so I'm doing CrossFit. I think we're doing like squats or something like that. And man, I've got about, I got like 10 more reps I got to get done. And I was kind of in this, I was like, I don't really want to do it. I'm just going to kind of pretend like while everybody's finishing their workout, I'm just going to pretend like, I'm like, oh yeah, it's so hard. And then my coach comes up to me and just starts just laying into me. He's like, you've got 10 more and I know you can do it. Get it done. And I'm like, yes, I can. And so I'm just like, man, I'm doing it. And I'm like, man, you got 5 more. And he's just yelling, you get it done. Man, dude, I like passed out afterwards. But man, the motivation that he gave me, man, I got those 10 reps in. Students, sometimes we need people to do that to us, right? Yes? But sometimes we need something different. Sometimes we need just somebody to be gentle with us. And Elijah is in such a hurt spot. He's so tender and he's so in a vulnerable place that God knows exactly what he needs. And he doesn't need just this like pounding. He doesn't need this like, man, get up, do 10 more reps, you can do it. No, he needs somebody to just be gentle with him. And this is what happens. After he's so frustrated, he's hurt. 1 Kings 19, verse 5, it says this, and he lay down and he slept under a broom tree. And behold, an angel touched him and said, arise and eat. And he looked, and behold, there was at his head a cake of bread on hot stones and a jar of water. And he ate and drank and laid down again. And the angel of the Lord came again a second time and touched him and said, arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you. And he rose and he ate and he drank and he went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mount of God. Here's the deal. Sometimes God is going to call us into uncomfortable things. God knows that he's going to call us to live in a way that is going to make our lives maybe a little bit more difficult down here. God knows that sometimes when we follow in the way of Jesus, that there's going to be a storm that happens because of those choices, because we are opposed to the world. And what God does in this moment is he just comes down and he says, listen, take a nap. Get some food. It's going to strengthen you. This journey is too great for you, but let's just rest right now. I know you're in the middle of it. And what we're about to see is that he doesn't relent on Elijah for the mission that he has sent him on, but right now he just gives him a little bit of rest. Students, there was a couple of months ago that just because of what I felt like the Lord was calling me and my family to do, man, there was just like this rising tension, this rising anxiety, this rising stress in my life. And I was so tired and exhausted. I didn't know necessarily what to do. I knew what God's calling me to do, but I was just like, it's kind of opposed this way and all of these things. And people were saying things about it. And I just remember there was this time when my son and wife were out of the house and I was by myself. And I felt like the Lord just prompted me to say, he's like, man, Tyler, take a nap. Take a nap. I've got lots to do, God. He's like, no, I just felt that internal nudge. Man, take a nap. So I went to the couch and turned on Netflix and started watching a show, and I just immediately felt the conviction of the Lord. He says, no, I didn't tell you to lay on the couch and watch a show. I told you to take a nap. So I turned the TV off, and I went and got on my bed, and I got on my phone and was going through Instagram. Again, I felt this internal nudge where it was like, I didn't tell you to just sit on your phone. I'm inviting you to find rest and sleep. It was the most restful nap. It gave me the energy that I needed to carry on. Sometimes when God calls us into these uncomfortable things, man, he provides us just a little bit of care there because he knows what he's calling us to do. But it goes on because he's not done with Elijah. He's not done with where he's sending him. And there's this really interesting interaction that happens in 1 Kings 19, starting in verse 9. It says this, there he came to a cave and he lodged in it. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him. And he said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? And he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And even I only am left, and they seek after my life to take it away. And he said, go out. This is God talking to Elijah. Go out and stand on the mount before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by in a great and strong wind and tore the mountains and broke it into the pieces in rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of a low whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak, and he went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, there came a voice that said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? That's the second time he's asked. He said, I've been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets by the sword. And even I only am left, and they seek my life to take it away. And the Lord said to him, go, return to the way of the wilderness of Damascus. And when you arrive, you shall anoint Hazael to be the king of Syria. Here's what happens. God isn't in this big earthquake or in this big fire. No, God is in this low whisper. And there's a lot that goes into this passage that we're not going to even get to tonight. But what I want you to see from this is that God, in the middle of the storm that is following Elijah around because he's following in the way of Jesus, or following in the way that God has called him to go, God gives him a little bit of rest to go on the way because he knows that he calls us to uncomfortable things. But he tells him to keep going on the mission. He points him back to what he has called him to do in the first place. And I think that's what God's inviting us to do. And if you've said that you follow Jesus, not that you go to a Christian school, not that you've been here before, that you've been to a winter chill or whatever, but if you're following after Jesus, sometimes we're going to have to choose the storm. Sometimes we're going to have to choose the hard way of following Jesus. We know that we're going to be misunderstood. We may be even hated. It's going to create this storm in our lives, but it is what God is calling us to do. And in the middle of those storms, God is faithful and kind and gentle with us to point us back to what he has called us to do. And so my question is really simple. The band's going to make their way back up. We've got a couple songs we're going to sing, but I just want you to take a moment. I want to help you in this art of reflection. I want you to think about a question. And what is God calling you to do? It's really simple. right where you are. Man, is God calling you to maybe break up with your boyfriend because he's asking you to do things that you know you shouldn't do? Is God calling you to not wear certain kinds of clothes? Is God calling you to maybe give up part of your summer to go on a mission trip and not go to camp? Like, I don't know what it is, and I can't even begin to nuance every single one of your lives. So here's what I'm going to do. We're going to just take, 30 seconds to a minute before we get back into singing. And I'm just going to ask you to just go with me on this. So, put your phones away and just maybe let's just close our eyes for a moment. And I'm going to ask you, what is God calling you to do? It may be totally countercultural. It may be totally like, I don't even think I should do that because that's so out of the norm. And what is God calling you to do? So let's just all close our eyes. Let's put away the distractions and let's just reflect on that question. What is God calling you to do? Heavenly Father, sometimes you call us into really difficult things. Father, I simply pray that the Holy Spirit would move in this place. And I pray that the Holy Spirit would bring just a wave of courage over our students to follow in the way of Jesus. God, whatever you're calling them to do, God, would they do it? Would they choose to have that kind of storm in their life in order to gain the life and peace that you promise us? God, we love you. In Jesus' name, amen.